Greetings, magical mavens. Back in the autumn time, I started a new series here on the Writing Witch YouTube channel where I interview my witchy friends and colleagues to share their best tips with you on seasonal living and experiencing more magic in everyday life. What you may or may not know is that this has been a continuation and an evolution of my audio podcast, which has been running for about 5 years now. In the past, I didn't consistently post those episodes here, but in 2023, I thought it might be fun to reshare just my favorite episodes of the Alchemy of Affluence podcast from previous years here on YouTube. This episode is an interview with Molly Roberts, the art witch and legendary witchy YouTuber who helped inspire so much of what I'm doing in my business today. If you've been in the YouTube pagan community for a while, or if you've ever searched grimoire prompts or art witch on YouTube, there's probably no need for me to even give an introduction, but if you don't know her, you're in for a real treat. Molly is an artist, author, beauty seeker, and magic teacher. She helps beginners and professional creatives uncover their creative magic through YouTube videos, books, blogs, courses, and Patreon offerings. She believes that it's your birthright to live a magical life, and she's here to support you in discovering and fanning your spark. In this flashback to our conversation recorded in 2019, we're chatting about Molly's definition of the words witch and magic. Of course, Molly's witchy origin story and how she discovered that she was a witch. How she transitioned into a biz witch and started getting paid to do what she loved. How Molly helps her community to see the magic in the world even during the darkest times in life. Her greatest successes and challenges along the journey. Learning what to share and what to keep private as an online witch. Her advice to new witchy content creators on how to get started. Her best witchy tips on how to balance the magic with the mundane in your everyday life. And a story of one of the most magical synchronicities that she's ever experienced along her path. So pour yourself something cozy to drink, and let's go on this trip down memory lane with Molly.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
Thank you so much for being here. I've been watching your YouTube videos for I don't know how long now, definitely several years. And I've always just wanted to know how your magical journey came to be. So I'm really excited to chat. So first things first, and I already know the answer to this, but for any listeners who for some reason don't know, do you call yourself a witch, and what does that mean to you?
I absolutely call myself a witch. This really transpired for me probably in the last 6 or 7 years of my practice. I'm confidently calling myself a witch in public, so I'm very much out of the broom closet in that way. And I think that a witch is someone who isn't afraid to change things. I think it's a person who changes things and makes things. And I recognize that witch has not been in vogue. It wasn't for our ancestors. No one ran around calling themselves a witch. They wanted to live. So this is a new occurrence for us, but I do think it is really an electrifying word, which is why I like to use it. I think it has a lot of social and political connotations that really make it a powerful word. So yeah, I'm proud to own that word. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so ironic. Well, I guess it's not ironic. It's how cultures change, but it's so interesting how witch was originally an insult, and now we're just embracing it, and everybody and their mom wants to call themselves a witch. And I just find it really fascinating how culture just changes on its head.
Language changes. It absolutely does. It's powerful. Yeah.
It really does. So what is your definition of magic then?
I have lots of different definitions of magic, depending on how you use the word. I like to use it as a noun and a verb. But I think that magic is about making changes in the micro to affect the macro. I think it's about using intentions and being proactive and taking actions to create changes in consciousness, because that's how we experience the world. I think that magic is about recognizing, potentially honoring, and or tapping into patterns and cycles in nature. to potentially to benefit and enhance your wellness. That's one way. I also think that magic can be a word that describes our curiosity, our wonder, how receptive we are to possibilities. So I think there's
oh my God, I love that. Our receptibility to possibility.
receptibility, a word. We just made up a word. I'm into it.
It is now.
Language is powerful, so we're going to make up words.
Word magic, dude. Oh my gosh, I love that. Are you a gods and goddesses witch? Like, what is your belief system around that?
I would say yes and no. Let's try to nutshell that. I think that gods and goddesses are archetypal. I believe that gods and goddesses do exist in the psyche. I believe that they exist on the astral, and really the astral is collective consciousness, right? That's all of our combined experiences. So I think that they definitely exist in that way. I don't subscribe to sort of a spirit model where they're interventionist deities, sitting in the sky, watching what I do and directing my life in that way. But I think about gods and goddesses as a label for a stream of consciousness that we can tap into and have experiences. And so it's really within you. So I think yes and no is an appropriate answer to that question.
I love that. Like, it helps you tap into a stream of consciousness. And like, I know from watching your channel that you are a big advocate of doing that in untraditional ways too. So like, you can use like characters or, you know, other mythical creatures and mythical ideas to just kind of get yourself into a state of thinking outside the box. And I am so obsessed with that concept.
It's fun to play with. It's fun to play with.
Do you believe in fairies and or ghosts?
I think that answer would probably, I'd have to reference the gods and goddesses answer. I think that I have never had direct experiences with fae or with ghosts, so I can't speak to that, and I would never try to take that experience away from someone else. It's just not, and I really think it's because it's not something I'm focused on. You know,
yeah.
And you experience and see what you look for, and I'm not really looking for that. So I'd like to remain open to that. But I think it's also, I think fairies and ghosts play a really important role symbolically. So I think that they're very real to us in the psyche, that there's a reason we're still talking about ghosts. There's a reason that we talk about these things. So
yeah, I totally agree with you on that. What is your favorite divination tool?
Record my dreams. That's something I do every day. I think that looking into your dreams is a great form of divination. And I think, to clarify there too, I think about divination as sort of the art of finding things out, not necessarily the art of reading the future. It can be, but for me personally, yeah, the art of finding things out. So I find that my dreams actually are really a rich resource for that. So that's probably one of my favorite tools.
Love that. So like, are you one of those vivid dreamers who like almost every morning you have some symbol that you remember from your dream?
They're not, and most people who record their dreams with some regularity probably have a very similar experience, that if you are a vivid dreamer, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be like this really intense archetypal dream that has information for you. I have lots of dreams about not being able to find my locker. But what is interesting about it is you do start to see trends in your dreams, which I think is interesting. And a lot of times, I think that our dreams cue us into things about like our health and our wellness that we might not be paying attention to, but our dreaming self knows about it a lot sooner than we do. So I like to check in on my dreams to make sure I'm feeling good. And my dreams always know when I'm stressed before I do.
Oh, yeah. For me, I've noticed that I have not recurring dreams, but dreams that take place in a particular dreamscape. And like at least a few times a year, I'll end up back in that dreamscape. And like, I've moved so many times in my life. So the Dreamscape is kind of like, I'll start off in one building, but then as I explore the house, I find myself in rooms from every different building I've ever lived in. Mm-hmm. And like, the attic is where you explore weird and wonderful things. The middle of the house is where it's like mundane, regular things happen. And then the basement is where like shadow aspects come up. So it's kind of like my inner brainscape is a weird house.
Definitely worth investigating. That sounds really interesting.
What is your daily magical practice like?
It shifts from season to season because I'm very much a get outside and sort of an experiential witch in that way. But I do have a little routine in the morning. I like to get up, and it's still dark when I get up. So I get up and go to my altar, and I will light candles and leave some incense offerings and pull a card for myself. Generally, and then write down what I remember of my dreams. That's an everyday practice.
I love that you do altar work every day. Like, that is so witchy.
Altar work, and that's something too that I honestly felt really discouraged in the beginning, because people talk about their altar time like they're there for hours and hours and hours and hours. I can't meditate for an hour in the morning because I fall back asleep. I'm not a morning person. So for me to stick to it, it needs to be really simple. It needs to feel good and be simple, and just going in, lighting a candle, stick an incense, pulling my card. I can commit to that, and it feels good to be in that routine.
Yeah, totally. Sometimes simple is just the best. Like,
it is.
It's
gotta work, it's gotta work.
Yeah, like I've had phases where I've tried to be like super witchy and like do a whole ritual every single day, and I ended up just having like a spiritual burnout situation that I didn't do anything at all. So now I'm like, I'm just gonna wake up, meditate, do a little journaling, and see where the day takes me. And it's actually moving me really well. I don't meditate every day, but I try to meditate at least 4 times a week in some seriousness, sitting down and setting aside the time to do it. But evening is when I find that it comes more easily. So I just go with it. Yeah, It feels good. Yeah, go with your natural rhythms.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So do you have like a witchy or magical song that you're obsessed with, or a playlist, or like a genre of music that puts you into that sort of ritual-y vibe?
Oh my, the playlist thing, it's probably like a hobby at this point. I love creating playlists for the planets, so like planetary associations. Oh, cool. I like making playlists for the seasons, for Sabbats, for particular workings that I'm doing, because I think that using music and collections of music are a really great way to get in the headspace, real simply, but then also really kind of immerse yourself in sort of the field that you're trying to create around yourself, or whatever it is you're trying to make or bring in. So I use, oh my gosh, we could do a whole podcast.
How to make a magical playlist with Molly Roberts.
Love it. I do provide some of those on my blog if people are interested in that. I have a Solar Spice Psychic playlist that's up right now. I also have a Heart Magic Power Up playlist that's inspired by Brahma Vihara meditation, things like that. So, and they're all kind of fun and goofy and ridiculous. And
do you have a favorite witchy like YouTuber or just online influencer in general who you always find really inspiring when you need like a little shift in perspective?
The first person I think of is Joanna DeVoe.
Yes, had her on the podcast and we almost couldn't stop talking. so awesome. She's
a good friend and a mentor, and I adore everything she does. And I have several moments a week where I'm running into a wall or something isn't working. I have to think to myself, like, what would Joanna DeVoe do right now? What would Joanna do right now? So I love her channel. Her podcast is excellent. I find myself going back to episodes again and again. So Joanna's a gift that keeps giving.
Yes. same.
Yeah, she's on the pulse. And I also, Jessie Huntenberg is somebody else that I really enjoy. She's been really producing a lot of really quality, wonderful videos. Right now, she talks a lot about tarot and about sort of everyday witchcraft. And she has a very earthy vibe. She's casual and it feels comfortable to talk to her like you're hanging out. So I'm enjoying her a lot as well.
All right, so I'm really excited to dive into your story. So first things first, how did you happen upon your magical path?
This has been a long time brewing. I think I have always been this way, and I'm going to butcher this quote, but I think it's an Anne Rice quote, and I'm pretty sure it's from The Vampire Lestat, but it's something like that we never really change, we just become more of who we really are. And I think that I look back on time when I was very young, and I was always drawing magical creatures. I was always interested in having magical powers, but in a way that was like connected to nature. I spent a ton of time outside. I grew up in the boonies, so I spent lots and lots of time in the woods. We had a creek. I know that's kind of a colloquialism here, like a little river behind our house, and spending lots and lots of time there and being really interested in things like the Once and Future King and the Mists of Avalon and things like that. So fast forward like 20 years and I'm in school and taking women's studies and meeting just a lot of different people and learning about goddess-centered spirituality and feminist spirituality and different mythologies through art history, and then meeting people who are really into this and saying, well, this isn't just really like a hobby or an interest for me. This is like a viable spiritual lifestyle choice. And
yeah,
really
fits right in with that Mists of Avalon idea too, like the feminism and the mythology and all that.
So it's always really been there under the surface, and it hasn't really been until about the last probably 10 years that I've really kind of claimed that and committed to it as a real part of my life. Not something that I'm just like LARPing for fun, but really integrating into your everyday. So
yeah. So did you have like a coming out of the closet situation, or was it just like a smooth transition from like being a magical artist to being a full-on witch?
I think everybody else knew before I did. Really? I'm struggling to think of right now if there's one specific moment, like, my mom has always been a very open-minded person spiritually, and even though both of my parents, and even though I grew up attending a Lutheran church, as lots of people do in the Midwest, we read the Bhagavad Gita at home, and it was important to her that we understood mythology and that we learned about lots of other people's religions. So talking about spirituality was something we did a lot at home. I think I can think of lots of times camping or on trips, having the opportunity to have these really deep spiritual conversations with my parents. And I feel really lucky in that way, because I don't think a lot of people have that experience. So I think it just sort of unfolded, really.
Yeah, I love that. I love when it's your own family that's kind of encouraging you to be more of what you are, where like you hear so many stories about people having a really hard time telling their family. So I love to hear when like maybe your parents have a different path, but they're like, you know what, let her do her thing. This is great. Yeah. So when did you start transitioning from this just being like a hobby and a spiritual practice into actually, starting to create products and turning it into a business?
It was very gradual. And again, I was the last one to know. So
of course,
I started the channel with the intention of meeting other people, because there wasn't anybody in my immediate vicinity, in my immediate community, that was interested in what I was interested in. So I was feeling like a lot of people, I think, who start channels, feeling a bit isolated. So using the internet to reach out to people, and I just wanted to be part of the conversation. There were things that people were talking about that it's like, I think that's really interesting and really valuable, but I have a really different idea about that. And I do believe that if you have the idea, somebody else has got the idea, and you have to make the things that you want to see. So just building that way. And it was really a lovely way to share and meet people. And I just started making the things that people were asking for. The Art Witch book, I think, was the first thing, along with some meditations, just things that I wanted to share that people had said that this would be really useful to me. So that was sort of the impetus for that.
Yeah, I love how natural that is. Like, sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, I have all these ideas exploding out of me and I want to, make this business happen, but they're not really making it about a dialogue and seeing like what their audience really wants. So it's kind of like this roller coaster. But I love that for you, you were like, hey, what do you guys want to see? Give me some money so I can keep doing this. And here we go.
And I'm so deeply grateful. Like, before I go to sleep at night, I think about it almost every night. Like, there are people who support the work that you make. What? And if somebody had told me, because it was, my YouTube journey sort of started after I came out of a really dark, tough time, having a major personal transformation, like tower card hit the fan in a big way.
That for a lot of us.
Yeah. And if someone had said to me, while I was curled up, on my shower floor with my hair falling out and bawling my eyes out, like, it's okay, honey bunny, you're going to be a witch on the internet soon. Like, that's fascinating. Okay, whatever. But that's the way it worked. And yeah, it felt very organic. It feels like this is what I should be doing. And I'm so grateful that there are people who listen and support the work.
Yeah, it's so crazy how like your path will unfold and the most magical things can come out of like the shittiest experiences, and kind of like what we were saying about like this witch movement that is so powerful now came from like a repression of that. So it's crazy how those ebbs and flows happen. So would you say that like you have an ideal client or audience member who you would like to kind of help ease a transition that they might be going through? So, things are just a little bit easier for them to find their path than like the difficult things that you had to go through?
I think about regularly what I needed then. What did I need when it was so dark? What did I need when I felt like I couldn't ever make anything again? Or that I'd never be happy again. And that's the place that I go. That's the place that I visit. And that's who I create things for. I mean, I obviously create things for people who are not in that space, but we all have been at some point or in some stage of growth. So I think the people I'm speaking to are people who want to remember that life is beautiful, people who want to remember that they have personal power, people who want to remember that they can create a colorful life for themselves. I think that's who. I have a lot of people who are just starting off on their path too. And I love that. I absolutely love that because they have a lot of enthusiasm. And I think that there's something about a beginner's enthusiasm that's really infectious and keeps me motivated and excited too.
Yeah, I love that. And like, what's great about it is if someone is going through a really hard time and they happen upon one of your videos or one of your offerings, it can kind of give them that inspiration to come out of it. But also if they're just having an okay day, but things are pretty blah, it'll also just like bring that magic back in, even though it's not as dramatic, of a 0 to 100 type thing. I just think it's so powerful to, like, what I love about your brand is that you're always asking people to think outside of the box. Like everything is like a question or like a journal prompt or an idea or something that gets them out of their regular daily grind and into seeing the magic in life that will probably lead to some incredible epiphany that, like, who knows what it is right now, but it's like a ripple effect, you know?
Dogma doesn't help us grow, but I think play does. So that's the mission. The mission for everything I do is let's play, let's experiment.
I love that. I think adults need to have more playtime.
We do. We think about it as this sort of absurd luxury, but really we need it. We crave it. We need it. It is part of our wellness. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So what has been the most rewarding part of this journey so far? I've been following you for a few years, and I've just kind of watched your journey evolve from something that seemed pretty experimental to now it's just like so conscious, and so many people are following and so many people are interacting, and it's kind of a community now, as opposed to just an artist being like, hey, I'm out here, you know?
That's really the thing I'm the most proud of. I cannot believe the positivity and the diversity of ideas and willingness of our community blows my mind. I am so proud of that, because a lot of people talk about the internet as this sort of hellscape that no one wants to navigate, and you've got to be like a really tough motherfucker to get out there and do it. It's like, really? Because 9 out of 10 people that I have the opportunity to speak to or work with are like, they inspire the out of me. Like, so really, I think it's the community that's deeply rewarding, and feeling like it's okay to share. I try to bring my best all of the time, but I'm not afraid to tell people when I'm having a rough time or when I'm struggling, because I think that's important for us to talk about too. So. Yeah,
totally. I think you probably attract a great audience just because you have such great energy.
I used to get a lot of hate mail. I still do. It's part of being on the internet. But knowing and receiving letters and beautiful emails from people and going through comments, that just knowing that there are all of these witches and unicorns and magicians behind you, like, they make me brave. Like, I want to be brave for them, and not let the people who are trying to wreck what you're making ruin it for you, because I'm not going to let it ruin it for them. So they make me brave. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I've heard it said that it's like a percentage thing. So almost like you said with the 1 in 10, like really? When you have as many followers as you have, I guess that like 1% ends up, you know, you see it every once in a while, but it's like so underwhelming compared to the overwhelming beauty of just being able to connect with these amazing kindred spirits.
I'm really grateful. Yeah.
So on that note, what has been the most challenging part of your journey so far?
I think one of the challenging parts of this journey has been discernment about what to share, because I want to be as open and available as possible, but also being respectful to my own process, my own processing, and the people who live with me and are close to me. So sometimes, explaining to people, like, well, I'm a witch on the internet and that's my job, that like, I'm okay with it, and not putting people who are around me and close to me in situations that they don't want to be in, because it's not their job to explain my life to other people. So I think that's one of those things. And it was something I learned early on. It was kind of a trial by fire about what you are and are not willing to share, and that it is okay to keep some things to yourself. It is okay to keep parts of your process to yourself until they are fully cooked, and that's okay. So I think that was a learning curve.
Yeah. So what would you tell someone who really wants to sort of create an online presence and start finding those kindred spirits and start sharing their practice with, you know, the online community.
If you're starting out and you're looking to connect with other people, make things that you want to see. Make the things that you want as a resource. I think that's a big part. And there's nothing wrong with very simple sharing. Do it from the heart, do it safely, but just being genuine with people goes a very, very long way. And I think especially we do live in a time, I mean, think about it, that the resources we have available to us as far as technology is unreal. This is crazy that this is the work that we do, that we're having this conversation right now on this platform. It's totally wonderful. But also not getting too wrapped up if it doesn't work right away. I feel like the internet is this interesting kind of entity that takes up a lot of space in our minds and can rob us of a lot of peace of mind if we don't manage it. So it's okay if it doesn't take off. It takes time to grow things. So don't get discouraged. Be honest and don't get discouraged, I guess.
Wow, I love that. So I love to just get a tip or a hack from each one of my guests for the art. So if you could kind of advise our audience on one amazing tip to balance the magic with the mundane in their life so that they're keeping things magical and they're elevating and they're seeing that wonder, but they're also like able to stay grounded and, you know, be a human being at the same time.
I think that there's a lot to, like I said, writing down your dreams. I also think that there's a lot to checking out the sign that the moon is currently in. I like to use that to help inform what I'm going to do during the day. There's lots of little free apps that you can use. So obviously we know about phases of the moon, but the moon also travels through all the signs of the zodiac. And we know that all of those signs have some qualities that we can tap into. So using those for days that it would be good to schedule meetings with people because you're feeling fluid and communicative, or a day that would be really good for you to sit down and do your planning for the month, or I'm going to shoot videos today because I feel like being seen and I feel like being out, you know, things like that. And obviously if you're not a content creator, you can still use those to your advantage. But I think it's just also kind of a nice way to just a little connecting with nature on that way, and sprinkle a little bit of the magic into the stuff you gotta do anyway. So
I love that. I preach all the time about like, know what the moon phases are so that you know like when you're going to have the energy to do like a big project, or like when you're going to need to give yourself some downtime, or you know, it's just so important. And what I always tell people is like, if you are like an energy witch, you're going to be really tapped into the energy of what the moon is doing, and it's really going to affect what you're doing. And you might as well try to, you know, not try to swim upstream. And then if you're a logic witch, like I am, which I do feel it energetically too, but I have to justify everything in a mental way. So for me, it's just like, I have this like natural thing in the sky that keeps me on point with what I need to get done. You know, it's just it's an organization tool that also happens to be magical.
Yes. Yes.
So I love to wrap these up with just a little story about the most magical thing that's happened to you recently.
I think that's interesting that you start the show with speaking about definitions of magic. And I think one of the things that we like to assume about the magical process is that it's going to feel really good. Mm-hmm. It doesn't.
You know, sometimes it literally feels like
you know, if you're interested in alchemy, you'll know that. But you know, working through the processes, there are some names for some stages of alchemy that nobody would voluntarily, you know, like sign up for. But they're all necessary. They're all necessary to the process. And if things are feeling too super, at least in my personal opinion, I think if things are feeling too easy and you're never challenged by anything, you're not doing big enough magic because nothing's happening, nothing's changing. So I'm trying to think. So I guess I have two little stories. I always think it's interesting when you're sharing stories about magic or synchronicities. Like sometimes it kind of feels like you're trying to explain a dream you had to a coworker. They're like, that's great. I don't get it. Why are you telling me that? It doesn't mean anything to me. Because the synchronicities can be really small, but powerful. And there was, towards the end of the summer, I devoted an entire summer to doing work with Venus, doing work around allowing myself to have fun and feel good about having fun, pleasure, allowing myself to experience luxury, because I had a lot of hangups around that if I'm not grinding all of the time, then you're not earning it, and wanting to basically just have a really beautiful summer with my partner. And I ended up doing some work around it, and nothing was happening, and I was starting to feel like, this is stupid. I think all witches kind of have that moment where you're like, what am I doing? This is dumb. And not wanting to let it go. And then I came home from work and there were a bunch of doves in my driveway, and they don't live here. They, like at all, it really freaked me out. And I ended up calling animal control, and they happened to escape from a state fair.
What?
Yeah, but that they ended up in my driveway.
That is so crazy.
Was a very interesting signal to me that, no, this is not stupid. It's taking time. It was sort of a, like a really great knock-knock joke from the universe. Like, thanks, Venus. I see you. Okay. Thanks for freaking me out. That was weird.
What do doves represent? Do you know?
They're associated with Venus. They're associated with Aphrodite. They're a messenger.
Yeah, that like pleasure and luxury thing.
Yeah, and it really freaked me out. I loved it. And I was trying to explain to my partner why that was so freaky and weird. And another one, honestly, my other magical story was you reaching out to me was when one of my big goals for the new year was to try to be less insular, to reach out to more people and the kind of people that I really like to speak to. And holy smokes. Yay. Thank you so much. So that was fun. And having some other really magical women sort of drift into my life in this really beautiful, natural way that I'm super duper excited about. So thank you. This was magical.
Oh my gosh, you are so welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. So, Magical Mavens, what are your thoughts on the topics that we touched upon in this conversation? I invite you to share your experience in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for more of these inspiring conversations. And if you also enjoy listening to audio podcasts, all of these episodes are also available on your favorite podcasting platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just search Alchemy of Affluence Podcast. And if you haven't already, I also invite you to subscribe to Molly's channel. She's currently still making super inspiring videos, and she has an extensive library of content from previous years. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed this conversation, I invite you to check out this video next.